You won't believe what just went down at Drake's latest tour stop. And no, this isn't your average rap beef headline. In a moment that left the entire stadium frozen and fans completely blindsided, Drake paused his show mid-performance to directly address the Kendrick Lamar lawsuit that's been buzzing in the underground like a ticking time bomb. What he said, scorched earth. But that's not even the craziest part. Mere moments later, an industry insider dropped a bombshell revelation about Drake's own record deal. And let's just say, Kate paints a completely different picture of the Six Gods' rise to fame. Sources say he's been hiding behind a brutal contract for years. One that might explain his mysterious collaborations, sudden album drops, and even why some of his beefs mysteriously vanish. And now, with Kendrick's legal team circling like sharks and rumors of a betrayal from within Drake's own inner circle, the drama is boiling over. Could this be the beginning of the end for one of hip-hop's biggest icons? Or is Drake finally ready to burn bridges and reclaim control? Stay right here, because what we're about to expose will shake the music industry to its core. The lights were low, the bass was heavy, and thousands of screaming fans had packed into the arena, ready for just another electric night on Drake's After Hours Till Dawn 2.0 tour. But what unfolded on that stage in Detroit wasn't just another concert moment. It was the beginning of something far darker, deeper, and far more personal than anyone could have predicted. Drake had been noticeably off during the first half of the set, skipping certain crowd pleasers and pacing across the stage like a man with something to say. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Something was wrong. And then, without warning, the music cut. Drake stepped forward into the spotlight, sweat beading down his face. His eyes scanned the crowd like he was looking for someone, and when he finally spoke, it was with the weight of someone carrying a secret too long. "I wasn't gonna say nothing," he began, voice low and tight. "But since people want to play dirty and start lawsuits in the dark, maybe it's time y'all hear the truth in the light." The crowd gasped. Phones went up. Fans froze. Because everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. Kendrick Lamar. Rumors of legal tensions between the two rap giants had been simmering beneath the surface ever since their lyrical war hit a fever pitch earlier this year. Kendrick had gone quiet after releasing a scathing diss track that accused Drake of everything from ghostwriting to industry manipulation. But what fans didn't know was that, behind the scenes, Kendrick's team had allegedly filed a confidential lawsuit against Drake, one that claimed he'd breached an unspoken truce between them, using unreleased material from a private 2017 studio session as ammunition in a recent verse. Drake, now standing on stage, was done keeping it quiet. "There's things y'all don't know," he said, pacing again. "About who started this. About who begged for a ceasefire. About the deals that get made in back rooms where no one's watching." And then, with no warning, he pulled out his phone and started reading a set of messages aloud. Voice shaking with emotion, he shared what he claimed were texts from Kendrick himself. Messages that painted a very different picture of their relationship. In one, Kendrick allegedly said, "You know, they're trying to kill me out here. The label, the execs, they want me quiet. They got dirt on me." In another, "I didn't want to come for you, but I had no choice. They made me." Fans were stunned. The crowd had gone from wild to dead silent, the weight of Drake's words landing like bricks. But the real shock came after the show when a mysterious post appeared online from a well-known industry whistleblower. The same account that exposed multiple music label controversies in the past. The post claimed that Drake's sudden vulnerability on stage wasn't just about Kendrick. It was the tip of a much bigger iceberg. The post read, "Ask why Drake kept quiet about that deal. Ask who owns his masters. Ask what he signed in 2009. The truth. He's been locked in one of the worst record deals in modern hip-hop history." And just like that, the internet exploded. Fans began digging, piecing together old interviews, strange behaviors, and moments that suddenly made a lot more sense. Why did Drake drop 3 albums in 18 months? Why did he suddenly start collaborating with artists he'd previously distanced himself from? And why had he never gone fully independent, despite having the money and clout to do so? The answer, according to the whistleblower, was chilling. Back in 2009, when Drake signed with Young Money and Cash Money Records, he allegedly agreed to a slave-style 360 deal that not only gave the label a cut of all his revenue streams, music, merch, touring, even endorsements, but also locked him into an eternal renewal clause. That meant every time he re-upped, the contract extended itself. And buried in the fine print was a clause that made it almost impossible for him to buy back his masters unless he paid a fee. So astronomical. It would bankrupt even him. Drake's camp had always maintained that he renegotiated his contract in 2018, but now fans were wondering, was that a smokescreen? And was Kendrick's lawsuit the trigger that forced Drake to finally speak out? Sources close to Drake began leaking more details. One claimed that the rapper had been quietly fighting behind closed doors for over a year, trying to buy himself out of the deal while keeping things quiet to avoid triggering a full-blown industry war. He's tired, the source said. He's been playing chess while everyone else is throwing disses. But this lawsuit, it crossed a line. Meanwhile, Kendrick's camp remained eerily silent. No statements. No posts, nothing. Fans started speculating whether Kendrick had anticipated Drake's meltdown, or if he had been blindsided by how public it all became. But not everyone was buying Drake's victim narrative. A former producer who worked on some of Drake's earliest tracks came forward with his own bombshell in a live stream that went instantly viral. He claimed that Drake knew exactly what he was signing back in 2009. He was warned, the producer said. I told him, this is a bad deal. You're gonna regret this. But he wanted the fame. He wanted to be the biggest artist in the world, and he didn't care how he got there. That statement opened a floodgate of backlash online. Some fans turned on Drake, accusing him of only speaking up now because he was losing control. Viral tweet read, "So you let Kendrick take the hit just to cover up your own deal?" Nah, that's snake behavior. Others argued that Drake's public meltdown was a calculated move to garner sympathy and pressure the label into releasing him. And just when things couldn't get messier, they did. Nicki Minaj, longtime friend and collaborator of Drake, posted a cryptic tweet that sent fans spiraling. Funny how truth only comes out when careers are on the line. Was she referring to Drake or Kendrick? Either way, the message was clear. Someone in this war was hiding more than they were revealing. Drake, however, seemed unfazed. The day after his explosive concert, he posted a black and white photo of himself in the studio with the caption, "Truth always floats." Fans immediately assumed he was working on a response track, a final blow aimed squarely at Kendrick and maybe even the label that's kept him shackled for over a decade. But behind the scenes, sources say Drake was anything but calm. One insider described a heated phone call between him and a high-ranking exec from his label. He was screaming, they said. He said, "I made this company billions, and they're still treating me like I'm disposable." He's done playing nice. As the dust continued to swirl, one thing was clear. Whatever was going on between Drake and Kendrick wasn't just about music anymore. It was about legacy, it was about control. And it was about secrets that had been buried deep until now. And as fans waited to see whether Kendrick would respond, whether the lawsuit would go public, and whether Drake would actually drop the alleged diss track he was working on, something else was already brewing beneath the surface. Something even Drake hadn't anticipated. A betrayal that would come from someone much closer to home. The betrayal didn't come from a rival, an executive, or a competitor. It came from someone who had once stood on the same stages, shared the same limelight, and called Drake's brother for over a decade. It came from none other than Noah "40 Shabib, Drake's longtime producer, confidant, and the architect behind so many of his biggest hits. And when it landed, it hit like a lightning bolt across the industry. It started with a single Instagram story, a blurry studio photo with Noah's silhouette in the background, and a caption that read, "Loyalty isn't a one-way street." Within minutes, blogs picked it up and speculation exploded. What did he mean? Who was he talking about? Was this a warning or a confession? Then, less than 24 hours later, Noah did something no one saw coming. He gave an unfiltered tell-all interview to a rising underground podcast, one known for pulling no punches. In it, he laid bare years of frustration, tension, and what? He called creative suffocation under Drake's empire. "I gave everything to this man," 40 said, voice shaking, years, decades. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being about the music. It became about image, about control, about power. Fans were stunned. This was the same 40 who stood by Drake through every scandal, every diss, every career pivot. To hear him speak like this now felt like watching a brother burn down his own house. But it got worse. 40 claimed that not only had he warned Drake repeatedly about the Kendrick situation escalating, but that he'd advised him not to retaliate. "I told him, leave it alone," 40 said. "This isn't about ego anymore. This is about survival. You're not untouchable like you think you are." According to him, Drake didn't listen. Instead, he doubled down, locking himself in the studio, cutting out longtime collaborators, and chasing what 40 described as a fantasy of control in an industry built on puppets. And then came the real bombshell. 40 revealed that he had seen the original 2009 contract with his own eyes. And what he saw shocked even him. He didn't just sign away his masters, 40 said. He signed away decision-making. The label can veto his album titles. They can delay his releases for any reason. They even own the rights to shelved songs. He built the castle, but they kept the keys. It was a revelation that turned Drake's image as the untouchable rap king into something else entirely, a prisoner in his own kingdom. Drake's team, in full damage control mode, released a carefully worded statement denying 40's claims. They called the interview disheartening and accused him of distorting facts for attention. But fans weren't convinced. This was a lie. It was an incredibly detailed one. And 40's track record, spotless. But the damage was already done. Suddenly, every decision Drake had made over the past decade was being reanalyzed. The abrupt genre shifts, the surprise mixtapes, the disappearing features. Fans began to wonder, had it all been orchestrated? Not by him, but by the machine around him. Amidst the chaos, Kendrick finally broke his silence. He didn't post, he didn't tweet. Instead, he appeared without warning at a pop-up show in Los Angeles. No announcement, no promotion, just Kendrick, a microphone, and a crowd that had no idea what they were about to witness. What followed was nothing short of a lyrical bloodbath. Kendrick unleashed a 6-minute freestyle, raw, venomous, and direct. He didn't name Drake, but he didn't need to. Every line was laced with implication, every bar a blade. What's a king to a contract? Spat. What's freedom to a man who leased his voice? The crowd lost its mind. Social media went into meltdown. The freestyle was reposted millions of times within hours. Dubbed the final nail in Drake's coffin by fans and critics alike. Kendrick had spoken, and he hadn't held back. But behind the scenes, things were spiraling. Drake, now cornered, publicly was said to be lashing out privately. Sources claimed he fired 3 close advisors in 1 week. Studio sessions were canceled. Meetings with his legal team stretched into the early hours of the morning. One insider said he's unraveling. He thought he could control the narrative, but now the walls are closing in. And then, just when the storm couldn't rage harder, it happened. A leaked email, allegedly from one of the top execs at the label Drake signed with, surfaced online. The contents were explosive. The email discussed strategies to contain the artist's influence post-renegotiation, aligning ways to delay album drops until Q4 for market control, and even referencing seeding narratives about creative burnout. The artist, not named, but the timestamp matched Drake's album rollout delays perfectly. Fans couldn't believe what they were reading. It wasn't just a bad contract, it was a full-blown system of manipulation. A structure designed to keep Drake profitable but controlled. Within hours, #FreeDrake began trending worldwide. Celebrities started chiming in. Post Malone tweeted, "Artists need to own their art. Period." The Week Dead posted a cryptic photo of chains breaking. Even Rihanna, who rarely comments on industry beefs, liked a post criticizing the music industry's treatment of artists under exploitative contracts. But not everyone was Team Drake. Cardi B tweeted and then quickly deleted. "Sometimes you sign up for the mess." Fans took it as a subtle dig, a reminder that Drake had once mocked others for complaining about their deals. Now, he was in the same position, and through it all, 40 remains silent. No follow-ups, no clarifications. It's just that one interview hanging over Drake like a ghost. But those closest to Drake say the betrayal hit him harder than any diss track ever could. He never saw it coming. One friend said 40 was family. That was the one person he thought would never flip on him. And maybe that's why, days later, Drake was spotted alone in Paris. No entourage, no security, no flashy cars. Just him, headphones on, walking the empty streets. At midnight, paparazzi captured the moment, and the photos told a story the music hadn't yet. A man worn down, king without a castle. A voice still heard, but now surrounded by silence. But what no one knew was that while Drake walked those Paris streets, his lawyers were preparing a move that could change everything. A legal maneuver that hadn't been used in the music industry in decades. It's one that could force the courts to publicly expose the contract and potentially void it altogether. The catch: if it failed, it could bankrupt him completely. And that wasn't even the biggest risk, because while Drake was planning his legal chess move, someone else had already gone to the press with a hard drive, an anonymous source, a former associate, and on that drive, something even more damning than the contract, something that could shatter everything. The hard drive arrived anonymously at the editorial office of a notoriously ruthless media blog known for tearing apart celebrities with no mercy. It came in an unmarked envelope, no return address, just a small note attached with a single chilling sentence. "This is what he never wanted you to see." At first, the editors thought it was another stunt, just another fake leak from someone desperate for attention. But within minutes of plugging it in, they realized this was something else. It wasn't just one or two files. It was a library. Over 200 gigabytes of voice memos, unreleased demos, internal label documents, and worst of all, private conversations recorded without consent. And at the center of it all, Drake. The contents painted a picture of an artist spiraling behind closed doors. Audio files of late-night calls captured him venting to insiders. Growing increasingly paranoid about his team, the label, and even his own fans. In one particularly disturbing memo, he ranted, "They don't love the music, they love the myth. And when the myth cracks, they'll turn." But the most shocking file wasn't about the fans. It was about Kendrick. A folder labeled K. 2017 included what appeared to be raw audio from that now infamous studio session Drake and Kendrick allegedly shared years ago. And buried within those files was a damning discovery. Drake had used a specific cadence and melody from Kendrick's unreleased verse and recycled it in one of his recent chart toppers. The whistleblower had been right. The lawsuit had teeth. Within hours, the blog published snippets heavily censored to avoid legal retaliation, and the internet went into complete meltdown. Drake stole Kendrick's flow trended globally. Fans felt betrayed. Critics who once praised Drake's innovation were now questioning whether parts of his catalog were built on borrowed genius. The backlash was instant and brutal. Memes flooded timelines. comparisons were drawn side by side. And while Drake's loyal fan base fought to defend him, a growing tide of voices began to turn. What was once framed as a petty rap beef was now morphing into a full-blown integrity crisis. But it didn't stop there. A second leak from the same hard drive dropped. 2 days later, this time including emails between Drake's then-manager and high-level label execs. In one chain, they openly discussed ways to manipulate Billboard chart placements, including strategies involving bundling tactics and playlist manipulation. One exec allegedly wrote, "As long as the illusion holds, we keep winning." It was the final straw for many. What had once seemed like effortless dominance now looked like strategic fabrication. The illusion, as Drake himself had feared, was starting to crack. Kendrick's team, capitalizing on the chaos, filed a formal legal motion to unseal the lawsuit. They wanted everything public, every detail, every date, every file. And the move left Drake's legal team scrambling. The court date was set, and this time there would be no settling in private. Fans were torn down the middle. Some still stood by Drake, arguing that the industry itself was dirty and he was just playing the game better than anyone else. Others felt duped, insisting they deserved better from someone who branded himself as authentic. But in the middle of this storm, one person emerged with an entirely different perspective. Sophie Brasso, the mother of Drake's son, did something she had never done before. She spoke out publicly in a lengthy Instagram live. Visibly shaken but composed, she shared her own side of the story. "I'm not here to take sides in a rap war," she said. "But I will say this. I've seen what this pressure does to him. I've seen the weight he carries behind the cameras. It's not just about music. It's about identity." And then she dropped the emotional gut punch. "There were nights he'd call me, drunk, broken, saying he didn't know who he was anymore. Not Aubrey, not Drake, just empty." Fans were stunned. Even those who had turned on him paused. Because beneath the headlines, the leaks, the lawsuits, and the betrayal was a man spiraling under the weight of an empire he could no longer control. But the biggest twist was still to come. 3 days before the court hearing, a new anonymous post surfaced on a dark web forum notorious for hosting whistleblowers. The post claimed that the hard drive was just a decoy, a distraction. The real files, the post claimed, were in a cloud drive linked to a private email that belonged to Noah 40. SHEBIB. Fans were in disbelief. Was 40 the source of the leak? Drake's camp went silent. No statements, no comments, nothing. The silence was deafening. And then, without warning, 40 posted one line on his story. "I didn't leak it, but I know who did." The internet exploded. Speculations ran wild. Some thought it was a bluff. Others believed 40 was protecting someone. But the real shock came when another name started being whispered in private chats in industry circles. Baka. Not nice. Drake's longtime friend, once his enforcer, once part of the inner circle. And now, according to insiders, a man feeling pushed out. The theory: Baka, angry at being sidelined after years of loyalty, had copied files from a shared server and fed them to the whistleblower. Revenge wrapped in loyalty. Neither Baka nor Drake commented. But suddenly, all of Baka's photos with Drake vanished from his Instagram. That it was the quiet confirmation fans needed. What had started as a legal jab between two rap titans had now mutated into something no one could have predicted. A full-scale collapse of Drake's inner circle. Friends turning, family watching from a distance, and the empire he built now showing visible cracks in its foundation. And in the middle of it all, Drake, silent. No tweets, no songs, no appearances, just gone. Until, out of nowhere, a flyer began circulating online. No promotion, no press, just a plain black background and the words, "One night only." Truth, fans were quick to decode the flyer. The location, Toronto. The date, the night before the court hearing. The venue, a small, intimate hall known for spoken word performances, not stadiums, not arenas, something. Different rumors flew like wildfire. Was Drake about to speak, perform, confess? No one knew, but one thing was clear. Something big was coming. And for the first time in his career, Drake wasn't just fighting for hits, clout, or competition. He was fighting for his truth, and the world was watching. The line outside the Toronto venue stretched around the block. No press were allowed, no guest list released, and no one really knew what they were walking into. But by 9 p.m., the small 400-seat theater was packed to the brim. The lights were dim, the energy electric, every single person in that room holding their breath for what might be the most important night in Drake's career. No DJ, no hype man, no openers, just silence. And then, without warning, he walked on stage. No flashy clothes, no designer jewelry, just black jeans, a simple hoodie, and tired eyes that told a story all on their own. The crowd didn't scream, they just stood, frozen. This wasn't a concert. This was something else, something sacred. He walked to the mic, looked out across the sea of faces, and after a long pause, finally said, "I wasn't gonna speak again, but silence don't protect you. It just delays the explosion." The room was silent, waiting. They think they know everything now, he continued. They heard the leaks, they saw the lawsuits. They think the story's written. But there's a difference between truth and what people want the truth to be. What followed wasn't a rap. It wasn't a performance. It was a confession, raw, unscripted, and painfully real. Drake opened up like never before about the deal he signed in 2009, about how at 23 he was hungry, naive, and desperate to prove himself. "They offered me the world," he said, "but they didn't tell me the price was my freedom." He admitted that yes, he knew the contract was flawed, but he didn't realize how deep the control went until it was too late. "I thought success would save me," he said. "Turns out it just trapped me in a prettier cage." He talked about the Kendrick session in 2017. He didn't deny it. In fact, he said the opposite. Kendrick, he was a brother once, he said, but when pressure hit, we both folded different ways. "I used a melody I shouldn't have. It wasn't a bar-for-bar robbery, but it was still wrong. And I didn't own up to it." Gasps echoed through the audience. He turned toward the back of the stage where a piano stood. Walking over, he sat down and began playing a slow, haunting melody. No lyrics, just keys and silence. And when he finally stopped, he looked back. To the crowd, "You ever wake up one day and not recognize the man in the mirror?" He asked. "I've been performing for so long, I forgot how to be Aubrey." The room was still. Few fans wiped tears from their eyes. And then came the final blow. Drake revealed that in the past 6 months, he had been quietly working with a private legal team, not just to fight the Kendrick lawsuit, but to tear up the entire contract system, holding him hostage. And 2 days earlier, he received confirmation. As of this week, he said, "I own everything. My voice, my name, my music." Finally, the crowd erupted. But he wasn't done. He leaned back into the mic and said, "But it came at a cost." He confirmed that the betrayal did come from within. And yes, it was Baca, someone he called a brother, someone who had once taken charges for him. But time, envy, and silence had created a poison. "He thought he was saving me by leaking the truth," Drake said. But he broke something sacred: loyalty. And then, to everyone's surprise, he said he forgave him. Not for him. He added, "But for me? Because carrying that hate was eating me alive." The audience was stunned. Drake had bared his soul, admitted to his flaws, acknowledged his enemies, and instead of declaring war, he chose peace. But the drama wasn't quite over, because in the back row of the theater, Kendrick was there, hood up, head low but unmistakable. The camera caught it. Fans caught it. Drake saw him, nodded once, and said something no one saw coming. "If you still want the smoke," he said quietly, "I'll meet you on the mic. Not in court." And just like that, the crowd lost its mind. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a retreat. It was an invitation, a challenge not in anger, but in artistry. To take the war out of the courtroom and back into the booth, the event ended not with cheers, but with standing silence, an unspoken respect hanging heavy in the air. Fans left changed. The internet lit up. Clips from the speech went viral. And for once, the headlines weren't just about scandal, they were about humanity. But the aftermath? Complicated. The lawsuit with Kendrick was reportedly dropped within 48 hours, quietly and without settlement. Insiders say the two rappers spoke privately after the event, not as friends, but as artists. No hugs, no reconciliation. Just Respect Noah 40 Shabib posted a cryptic photo of the theater, captioned only, "Truth is a cleansing fire." Fans took it as a sign that the friendship, though broken, wasn't completely gone. Bucka.